Hey, this is Richie here from Rougen TCG, and today I'm going to take the tale I spun for a spin to leave your head spinning. The story of Rougen is tantamount to a big shoddy bunch of retroactive decisions, but that's no fun, so I've changed my mind. Everything's been one big, epic tale. Every card is spun into a huge weaving web of narrative perfection. Really? How does Gang Up Boss relate to big story? As a Russian, I expect you to fire the Chekhov's gun. I'll get there. Hopefully. Listen, I'm not a storyteller. I'm a game mechanic silligifier. If I told you the whole thing and justified every of the 120 Rougen cards, I'd be here all day. The first time I tried, I got a bit bogged down by the whole setting up a big super duper alley-oop or macro narrative. Now, I have to acknowledge that I'm a bit of a dunderhead, and I've bit off a lot more than I can chew. Afford me a bit of leeway to start with some fundamentals. Rougen takes place in a world called Arrow. Rather than using years, they call their timescales eras, and the world is directly tied to the intent of the previous holder of the Rougen stone. It's not granting a wish because you can't game the system. You don't think a thought and have it happen. It happens once you have uncontested control of the Rougen stone. Previous holders of the stone are called Gold Class, formerly legendary creatures. Their intents and consequences were as follows. Ugar desired to return to his original form, so he became Mount Azra. Kaija Unagu desired never-ending food, and with it, gained a never-ending hunger. Steinholt Obside desired for the long piece of his time to come to an end, and so the world turned against him. Yugen Hyriel desired that his masterpiece be unparalleled. His spellbook took something of a mind of its own. Monster Hunter Graven desired to be graved in combat. He's been locked in constant combat, but has yet to find his superior. Annalise Alita desired a chance to set things right by her standard. Thus, the Nightmare of Era 600 was her direct responsibility. The Forgotten Founder desired a legacy, lavish and written in gold. The place will never be forgotten, since it got co-opted. Life Taker of the West, in his vanity, desired only more of himself. Perhaps he's the only person to get exactly what they wanted. About each 100 eras is defined by the desires of those who held the Rougen stone last. Ugar with Era 0, Kaija Unagu with Era 100, Steinholt Obside with Era 200, Yugen Hyriel with Era 300, Monster Hunter Graven with Era 400, the Forgotten Founder with Era 500, Annalise Alita with Era 600, and the Life Taker of the West with Era 700. And as a final point of clarification, I should also mention that their effects in the game of Rougen are directly tied to what their intent was at the time. To be perfectly honest, I still feel like even this part of the lore is too big for one video. Let's just focus on Era 0 to 100, that's Ugarn and Kaija Unagu. Ugarn first. This Rockholder role was sculpted to be in human form for no other reason than to be scary. Ugarn didn't hold the stone as much as it was a victim of it. See, the Rougen stone had been buried for eras, covered in the crust of the land so deep it was unfindable, but no person held the stone, at least until the rock was given personhood in Ugarn. See, personhood is kinda weird in Arrow. Anything that is believed to be alive and wants to be alive will be alive. Hence, cards like Living Wall, Ivorize, and Cursed Garb, inanimate objects that took a life of their own. When the people in Ogra, which is the group of clunky primitives who built Ugarn, their treating it like an autonomous entity was good enough for the Rougen stone to register it as one, and accepted it as its holder. So it corrected its position into Ugarn, and that would have been hunky-dory if the Giant Slayers didn't truly despise Ugarn and the other risen giants. Ugarn didn't have much of a desire until it learned it was so hated. In its gentle, lumbering, newfound soul, the first real want that it had was fulfilled. It wanted to go back to before its creators hated it. The Rougen stone recognized this as the closest thing to a desire and quickly granted it, turning the humongous ancient rock human into the mountain later called Mount Azra, a colossal crystal growth the size of a mountain range, dead center in Arrow. It's tak grusna. He just wanted to be a real boy. The most human experience of them all. Not being understood by your parents. I'm narrating! Stop quipping! Great, now I gotta get myself back into my serious face. With Arrow still in its primitive state, though picking up quickly where the disaster that was Ogra left off, one lizard of little renown was little Miss Kaija Unagu. This salamander-esque sweetie pie didn't understand much of anything. It was a side skipper, the sort of thing you'd see where any predators weren't. She only managed to get her claws in the Rougen stone by pure accident. Nobody who knew what the Rougen stone was knew where it was, and nobody who found the stone knew what it did. Fortunately for her, unfortunate for Arrow at large, she always had one desire in mind, a base instinct most any creature at any given time had. I want something to eat. The Rougen stone asked in its own stony way how much, and Kaija replied in her own skippery way as much as possible, more than anyone could ever ask for. The stone departed, flying into the sky and leaving little Kaija's tummy rumbling. Well, actually, all of her rumbling. Then, the body she'd had her whole time being in field exploded into the first dragon. Not the last either. See, archetypes in Arrow are a funny thing. They fill their needs, support each other. There's no such thing as a creature who can't benefit from its effect, right? When the Rougen Stone created Kaija's new form, it gave her the ability to gain more power than anyone else. But to benefit from that ability, she needed a group of creatures and effects that gave people power. This was before the invention of knights, so Captain Dragon Rider was just the concept of extra protection. Then, of course, the dragons manifested, and Trinket Trader too, unrelated to dragons. The being hungry made the creature into a deity? What if the Rougen Stone just gave her a Snickers? You're such a dork, Sai.